A short week, but we still got you covered here at Power Spike dGon alongside Jamada and Dom for the latest episode. This is the beginning of February, so a new month and a couple of teams not going to be playing until April. Anyways, we've got that, Europe, all that covered. Actually, before we came on, we were talking about how Jamada is wondering why he's so fair-skinned, or why he's not as fair-skinned as he should be, and I felt like Dom just had a really good answer there. Jamada, man.
Go ahead.
No, you don't have to say. You don't have to say. But you all at home.
Jamada's like, for some reason I just don't get like pale. Like I get 2 hours of sunlight in like winter, and I'm like, Jamada, I think you're black. That was my response, and then he called me Casper.
Clip it, and
ship it. Casper, only because, and I brought this up only because I was like, God damn, I've never heard someone lose the rebuttal so hard. Like, he's like, yeah, Casper. I was like, no, I'm sorry, Jamada. I think you had to come with something better than that, man. All right. Well, now that we got that one out the way, how was your guys' week? You're prepping the team for the big matches in for the SAC, Dom?
No, not at all. I'm not prepping them at all. It's never been my job to prep them. I'm not coaching them at all. So, I'm watching them. I'm hoping that things go well. And yeah, I mean, I think we're practicing more than we were before. So we're putting in more effort as a unit. They're playing more scrims, and scrims are going better as well. So hopefully we just come in with some prep, and I feel like the next round should be fairly easy for us. I mean, it was a wake-up call losing to Bulldog Esports.
Yeah, a little scary when you have to face the Danish devil in the mid lane, Harbo, who Jamada has strong ideas about and whatnot.
Yeah. Obviously I'm planning the show at the minute, and I'm gonna be on the analyst desk all week, so I get to watch all of the games, front row seat, planning the show for the two of the teams that potentially play Ruddy, and Harbo is very close to my heart at the minute. He's been having a fantastic split, and I think he could potentially bring his game to leader, assuming they can make it past DMG.
Yeah.
No sarcasm here.
Yeah, little sarcasm. Just with that, good luck in the matches, and hope that the content continues through the best of fives and the lower bracket run. The shortest sack tap we'll have for Power Spike, I think, because there were no matches. There were matches over in Europe, which is where we go to kick things off. We got a top four. We have a clear top four. Los Gigantes. It was a good run. It was very fun, but they have fallen off, and now we've got Fnatic, KC, G2, and MKOI, Movie Star Koi, at the top there. Are we surprised with the way that this shook out? Are there any surprises with this, including who's in it, how fast they got there, what rank they are, all those things? Jamada, let's start with you, brother.
I think more the path and how things like kind of shaped week to week. I'm not super surprised of our top four. Maybe G2 struggling a bit more than, perhaps people thought from the offset. Ended up technically third seed, but if I recall correctly, everyone is kind of like 6-3 right at the top below Fnatic. So
yep.
I think for me, everything kind of landed roughly where I thought it would. The only team that I think really, really underperformed, even though I think, with hindsight, it kind of does make sense. Outside the top four, though, BDS, because I definitely had them coming at the very least like fifth, right? But they've looked like they've really, really, really struggled throughout the split. And then otherwise, I think Vitality finishing a little bit higher as well than I would have maybe anticipated, just because I thought maybe their solo lanes would need a little bit more time to come online. Alas, they kind of struck a little bit of momentum throughout the back end of the regular split.
Yeah, Dom?
Yeah, I think the top of the standings went similar to expected. I still feel like G2 and Fnatic are the two best teams. Like after the winter season, like G2 had some terrible games, obviously, but I feel like when they are playing like their good games, they look way more convincing to me than, for example, like Koi, who's been like throwing a bit, and they just still look like a little bit disjointed after early game. A lot of the ways they're getting leads, they stopped getting throughout the split. KC is fine when they have advantages, but I feel like in the tough games, like if you get into a slow, grinded out type of game versus Fnatic G2, I still think they're going to just make more mistakes around the map and be less coordinated and end up losing to those teams as well. Yeah, I would say like BDS was surprising how they started. I had much higher hopes for Paris. Like most people told me that this guy was like a real talent. The whole rumor was that he was supposed to go to G2, right? That he was supposed to be the person on G2. But then when BDS decided to keep him, then G2 had to get Labrov. That was the narrative. When I watched Paris play, he looked generally pretty bad in the first couple weeks. I think this week was slightly better, but not great. So could be just stage choking, could just take some time to acclimate to playing on LEC. Obviously, he probably feels some level of pressure being somebody who's a hyped up rookie. So I thought that he would hit the ground running and that team would have like a really strong bot lane. But it kind of did feel to me like Ice was trying to carry everyone. And like 113, I also thought would play a little bit better. He was running it down in the early weeks as well. So BDS, I was surprised by. I was surprised Heretics and SK weren't the two worst teams. Like, I mean, SK did end up being 9th, but I thought Heretics would just be the worst team. Like when I looked at the roster, I'm surprised that Rogue found a way to once again be so terrible. Because
I'm not surprised.
Really?
I'm not surprised.
I thought that this
roster. There's two
I thought,
culprits, Tom.
I don't know. I feel like Rogue, this roster, they should have been able to get like 3 wins. I think like they should have had enough like early aggression to be able to, just like Adam was always good at just running away with a regular season game every now and then, and that never happened. They were just terrible the entire time. Looked like a completely dysfunctional roster. And I think that the thing about Rogue is I don't feel like this team has much like growth potential with the unit. I think that the team is like, this is pretty much their best. This is their best split, or their best chance to be good, I should say.
Okay.
When you have their when you have their roster, you would just think that like they would hit the ground running. I mean, they have play pieces that have been in LEC that have been successful in LEC before. You'd think that they would just be able to figure out a way to at least have some path towards winning. At least in the early game, they would be able to transition that. But it looks like Patrick is just. I don't know. I feel like Patrick is just so washed at this point. I don't know why this guy is still in the LEC. Like he's just been like normally the way it works is if people are bad for even like a small amount of time, they get fucked. Like think about Crowdy. He was like the best AD carry in spring in 2023 with BDS. Like if there was an MVP for that split and BDS would have won, he would have just got MVP regardless. Still, even if there was an MVP candidate, even after getting second place and getting reverse swept, he still would be in the conversation for potentially winning MVP. His summer was like, okay, a little bit worse than spring. It wasn't like terrible. It wasn't like, oh my God, this guy fucking sucks. And then he's just like ostracized from LEC for like a year. And then Patrick could just turn in like shit performances for like 2.5 years. And it's like, yeah, I still just get to be here. Like, I don't know what dirt he has on the like GMs or something to allow him to still be in the league. But I'm just like, I mean, he doesn't even seem like a bad guy, so I don't want to flame him too hard, but it's just like, I just don't know why he's there. Like, I just feel like he has no like redeemable qualities when it comes to being a pro player. Like, it just seems like he's not super good in lane. His positioning is weird. He doesn't seem like overly intelligent about the game. He steps on mid waves that he shouldn't be stepping on. It's just really like frustrating for me to see a player like that just be in the LEC for so long, because I feel like there has to be better talent somewhere in Europe that could fit into like a team where at least you have like a young player that has some upside in some area that is deficient in other areas, and he'll get the experience to potentially be better. But I feel like Patrick was never going to be better than we've seen him for like the last like 3 years.
Jamada, you want to close here before? Like, I don't want to go too hard on these bottom teams because we have a whole segment for it.
I was about to say, look, I'm gonna maintain my composure because I've got some very strong opinions about Rogue, in particular. But yeah, I definitely do agree with a fair amount of what Dom's saying here about Patrick also. It is strange, but I also just feel like the way that GMs have been operating has been strange throughout a lot of the last like 12 months in particular, like more so than usual. So yeah, that's about it. We'll save it for the segment later.
All right. Was there a game from this week that jumped out at you that like the show me match? I think going into it, for me, it was the KC Fnatic match where I was like, okay, cool. This is a great, probably the match of the week. We'll learn something. Maybe secondary would have been Giant X and Fnatic, but this is the match where I want to learn what KC is made out of. I want to see if Callista's legit. I want to see if Yike is legit and can, navigate the team. And it felt like they failed spectacularly in that game, throughout. But was there a match that jumped out at you, or was that match one that stuck out at you here, Jamada?
I would probably say KC Vitality, just because of how stupid that game ended up being in the end.
Yeah.
I can't remember the ceiling of Vitality's lead. Was it like 5k, 6k?
It was like 5. It was like 5k, and it was maybe at like 14 minutes. Like, it was like super early into the game. They had insane lead.
It was like remake in Scrim territory, like kind of lead, and somehow Vitality managed to fuck it up. Which I have a lot of love for the Vitality boys, because I used to work with Pad, who's on the coaching staff. So I'll always have a bit of soft spot for them, but fuck me, that was not good. But it was a massive amount of grit and resolve from KC. I liked a lot of the decisions that they made around actually looking for picks and preying on Vitality's downfall, which it's always been, I think, for the last year, it's always been Vitality's thing. They overreach a lot, right? And I think especially when they're confident and they're in those kind of winning positions, they're a very easy team to dismantle sometimes. And I think KC did that. And I think they did really well around objective setup, or more like Vitality's better around Vitality's lack of good objective setup. And I think it was in the end they ended up getting dragons that they actually stacked dragons whilst they were losing. And that's kind of what flipped the game on its head, because it put Vitality in a position where they kind of made too big a mistake on the actual Soul Dragon, like 25 minutes or so, and then they ended up losing Baron off the back of that sequence, I want to say, off the top of my head. So it just made the game pretty unplayable for Vitality out of that. So I think probably that was probably the most exciting game that we ended up getting this weekend.
Did we learn about this KC roster more?
Definitely. I think that KC is starting to, just like, all the fears that I had about them are realized. Like, they have good players, but they don't really know how to like win games well. Like, their decision making in all of the games, I think, was bad. I mean, if you think about how they played the early game, there was the Vitality game. Remember the other two games they played? The Fnatic game, they got shit stomped. And then they played this game against BDS, they also got shit stomped. So they had like a terrible, terrible week. The fact that they went 1-2 is kind of saving people's it's saving like the perception of them. But it just seems like, I mean, they're young players, they're good individual players, but they don't have like that good of a plan of how to win, and they're pretty uncoordinated as well. There was also that game that they played last week. Was it versus Heretics? I forget who it was against. It was maybe, I think it was on the third day. Yeah, it was against Heretics. I mean, they played a game against Heretics last week where they had insane lead. I mean, the Victor got 2 kills to level 1. Victor getting kills to level 1 is like the most broken thing in the game, because you get like your up, like he had upgrade at like 5 minutes in lane. He's just like, one-shotting the backline. This is a game with like a 10-0 Victor. They're playing versus Heretics, and the game took like 37 minutes for them to end, with like the whole game essentially being lost at level 1 by Heretics. So I feel like if you look at KC's games, like, the players are all good, but the way that they play the game out is not good. And I think that this is something that's going to hurt them later on, and something that people had fears of, because you do have the Korean top laner, you have a bunch of players that haven't really like been in the position where they've had to lead games consistently. Like when Yike was on G2, people said that he did a lot of the early game, but as soon as it hits the mid game, it's Caps and BB talking about side lanes. Mickey was very vocal as well within that team. And I feel like all that type of stuff, you're really relying on players like Targamas to lead the game. And individually, Targamas had a bad week. He was playing really bad. And he's always been a player that's been kind of quiet. And from my experience, when players are inting, they are way less communicative than when they are like playing well. So if your shot caller is running it down and he's somebody who has a tendency to be quiet already, what ends up happening to the game? And a lot of the times it just looked like there weren't really like decisions that were being made. So for example, like the BDS situation, in the BDS game, like they didn't touch top lane for like, I was watching the game, it was like 7 minutes. They just like didn't touch the top wave because they were so concerned around this Otacon, where in reality, they should have been very happy to be like, hey, we have a poke comp. We would love for them to start Otacon. Like they were trying to start it themselves, pull it. Like, BDS was able to get into a good position. They weren't able to like land poke. And then they just stayed there for like the entire time because they're so afraid to give up the objective. But I feel like they needed to be way more willing to like give, for example, a 20-minute autocon. I feel like this is something that people haven't really understood yet about the game, is that like autocon is really powerful when you can bridge it into another objective, or if you have certain comps that are like really, really insane when it comes to diving or like forcing on turrets, or like, you know, you're using it against a team that doesn't have like, you know, any wave clear at all, stuff like this, which I think they did have low wave clear in the game. But in general, I think people are too protective of like the early autocons, like the 20 to 22 minute autocons, where if you're already like losing turrets, like you can use that timer, make people sweat for the autocon 4v5, have somebody like pushing out a wave, and you can just like play the game normally where your big fight goes around Sol, your big fight goes around Baron, and you just like let them take the objective, because it's not going to actually win you the game at this point. So I would just like to see like KC play with more nuance. And then I also think that they've had this problem where they don't really know how to play from behind. If you think about all of KC's wins, they're like the Draven games, right? They're like this game where they get 2 kills on a Victor super early. Like they haven't won many games that have been like, you know, where they've been losing and, you know, they've had to play their comp really strictly, fight at certain timers. Like that has just not been what KC has been good at so far. And it's very hard to have your identity be like, yeah, we just need to get early leads. Like you're just not going to always have early leads.
I'm smiling because that sounds like bro. Like, is KC European bro? Like, bro
no, they're
knows
much better
how
than
to
bro.
play
They're
earlier.
much better. They win.
Okay,
they win
okay.
games.
I won't
you know?
fight that at all. I know.
I'm such a bro hater.
I know you are. That's why I had to just slip that one in there for a little bit. All right. Thank you for the breakdown on KC and what to look out for there and what we learned about them that we didn't see in weeks 1 and 2. Final thoughts on our top 4 and our final week of the winter season. Is that what it's called in LEC here, Jamada?
Yeah, it is. It's winter season. The naming conventions are still not fantastic in Europe. But yeah, again, mostly to expectation. I think it's just about the path that got us here. I'm still looking out at like some kind of outside contenders. Like for me, I think Vitality are really weird this split, and I wonder where their ceiling is going to end up being, and like if they're going to do some nonsense, like knock one of the favorites, like knock a Koi into like a lower bracket kind of situation, right? If they end up matching up against each other, I can't recall the whole bracket off the top of my head, but that's the kind of shenanigans I think are going to go on. But otherwise, I think Fnatic are just the best team in the league at the minute in that top 4, and I think it's about bridging the gap to get there for the rest of the league at the minute.
Mickey X stocks just going up and up. Not that they weren't cheap before, but I guess it was too expensive for G2. Shout out to G2 though, getting 4 wins in a row. All right, so that's the successful teams over in the LEC as they move to the playoffs, and SK and Rogue go on vacation to what's that spot in Europe that everyone is it Cyprus? It's like the vacation spot.
Cyprus is one place that a lot of people like to go to. Yeah,
there was like a place where the Counter-Strike casters all went to, and their house looked like Malta. Thank you. That's the place. They get a little bit of time to go to Malta and then come back and play European solo queue or whatever to get themselves back together. But let's stay on the positive trend of positive players, positive things. Who has been the most improved player so far in 2025? Let's keep it in the West. We got to see, a handful of fearless best of ones and a little bit of fearless over in LTA North. Who's been the most improved player? And that is our Into the AM glow up. So why don't we kick that one off with our Into the AM glow up, and also remind you that our friends over Into the AM are having an anniversary sale. They've been powering us now for quite some time. They've got shirts. I tell you about the shorts all the time that make the glutes, the hammies look great. I wear the bombers on the broadcast. Head on over to intotheam.com and use the code LFN. That's intotheam.com. And use the code LFN to get an additional 10% off their up to 50% off Into the AM anniversary sale, January 22nd through February 9th. Thanks to our friends over at Into the AM. They've got everything you need. It's nuts. It's insane. So go get yourself some clothes, super comfy, super fashionable, and support the podcast while you're doing it. All right. So let's get to it. our Into the AM glow up. Which teams have had the most improved, or which players has had the most improved 2025? And we can throw out 3. Give me 3 guys, and we'll go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So, Dom, let's start with you. Who's been your most improved player in the West? Do we have 3?
It's improved. Now, when this is I'm gonna just make the qualifier here. Most improved is just the difference between how they were playing, right? It's just about the difference. It's not about them actually being good.
I'm happy with that criteria. Yeah, that's
okay.
I'm bracing. Right. I'm bracing.
So
Go ahead.
Because Alo was so shit last year, the fact that he was like okay, like he was like he had like a pretty good series. Like he's looked pretty good so far.
He's like
he has to be most improved.
Is he the best support currently in LTA?
I don't think so.
No. I mean, he was doing some things that I did not know he had in him.
You know, he's still like inting the game like at random points. Like so, I mean, you can see that there's going to be some games where the Ayla is going to come out and you're going to have him contesting Umti's newly set death record, in the LTA. But like he's making a lot more good plays. Like now he's making good plays and bad plays, where before he was like making bad plays and then like okay plays. So
putting wards down. Yeah.
I would say he's been like most improved. I mean, he looks like a top 3 support in LTA North right now, which was like not the case before.
Yeah, they were grinding. I mean, everyone was grinding here and when they came to boot camp, but I think something has to be said for FBI just being the kingmaker of NA. Like he goes to a team, he makes the team better. And then after a little while they start dipping. But when he makes that initial move, did it over with EG, did it with 100 Thieves, did it again over for NRG, CLG, and now back at 100 Thieves. So I like that one. That's a really good one. Let's just do 2 per person. Jamada, you're next. Who you got for your most
I'm kind
improved?
of a bit sad because I jokingly also wanted to mention Isla more because I think he might have had one of the few good elite support games that I've actually seen out of a support. It was either, I want to say it was Delight was the only other player, or it might have been Durer. It was
Lehens on Sunday, but like no one watched that game.
Duro ran it down. Duro ran it down when he played the elite support. Okay, he was just he was just sick, and then he just like ended up. I mean, it was just like average elite support game where it's like, oh, they hit a cocoon early. Oh, there's 0-7. Like that's pretty much how it works. Like,
but yeah, I think Isla's Elise game in it was the TL series, the 3rd game. It was low key like it's kind of difference maker. Like it high key won them the early game really, really hard. But Isla aside, I'm gonna put up maybe a contentious one because I think he's been living with a cloud over his head for the last 4 splits. Upset. I think Upset has finally been allowed the freedom to like be a player again. Obviously, the KC roster in summer, I think, had a massive amount of improvement, and then subsequently he started to look pretty good again. But I think this split so far in particular, he's actually looked really, really good in basically every aspect. Everything to me has kind of just gone up. Like if he was a FIFA stat card, I feel like everything would have gone up for him. I think he's been a lot more aggressive. He's been a lot less caring about his life. I feel like one of the kind of early or like when he was doing poorly on KC and the back end of the Vitality project, it was like, oh, Upset's a KDA player and he's not really playing to like get damage out. He's not hitting first target. All of these like different narratives. And I feel like he's kind of just said fuck off to all of these narratives so far in these opening 9 games. And I think Upset's probably had, I think almost unequivocally the best split of an AD carry, with the exception, individually with the exception of maybe Kalist. Like those are like the front runners in the LEC for AD performers. So I'm going to put up Upset. I don't know if that feels super contentious or not, but I think considering where the narrative was at last year, holistically compared to right now, I'm rocking with what I'm seeing out of Upset at the minute on this Fnatic lineup. I think he's looking significantly better.
I do remember that, specifically on Vitality, the KDA type playing. And the Vitality, when he joined Vitality, that was after the long spell of not playing, right? Like maybe there was
not a long spell. Like
it was like a year. Split. Yeah.
No, it was like 6 weeks.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was like the winter split. Like he just didn't play the winter split, and then there was like the 1 week break, and then he played. So he was like on Fnatic, went to Worlds, then didn't play for 6 weeks, and then he came back for spring.
Oh, damn, that felt like such a much longer time. But you're right. I'm looking it up now. It was 2 months that he was inactive before he joined Vitality. I wonder if the pressure of that very public situation made him play a little bit tighter while he was on Vitality, and then on KC they figured it out, and then now he's back to form. But
I just think that like as an AD carry, like if you just get really shit team fights, I just think it's hard to like actually deal damage. Like a lot of people want him to just like walk into the team fight, like auto twice in a terrible fight and just die with the team because they view that as like the more like honorable thing or like more manly thing to do in these situations. But I don't know. I was the only reason I wouldn't have upset as most like improved for me is because like I just thought he was good the entire time. Like I was I mean I always just was like one of the people defending him, and people were just saying it was because he was my friend. No, I just think that he's a good AD carry, and I just think that AD carries can't really do much in competitive on bad teams. I think it's very hard in general to play competitive on bad teams unless you're like a solo laner and you can actually. I mean, even nowadays, if you're a top laner, you get lane swapped on, but like most of the time, it's like you need to be able to like kind of show like your individual like prowess. And if you're a jungler and you're on a bad team and you know you have 3 losing lanes, it's hard to show that support. Like can't really do much either. You know, AD carry is the same way. I feel like you need to at least be a bot duo, like a good bot duo, in order to show your stuff. So I don't know. I just feel like a lot of fights, like people are like, they look at a super doomed fight where there's like 3 people on him and like his whole team just suicide engaged. Or they're like, oh, maybe if he went in and like autoed twice, then he could trade like 1 for 1 and then the game ends anyway. I don't know. It just felt like it was very nitpicky. I feel like no one does the same thing with other players. I think the only reason they're doing that is because they wanted to hate Upset because he had the huge drama with the French fans when he had the Adam situation. Also, he's somebody who's like very cocky. He's actually really funny if you like listen to what he says, but he has like the sarcastic humor that just really like grates on people. Like people just like really hate that. So I think his personality was something that people didn't like, and you know his beef made it so people wanted to see him fail. And then they were just using like the fact that his teams were bad as, you know, criticism of him. Like, if he's really so good, why is he on a 10th place team? And I'll tell you right now, I think you could put like whatever AD carry onto SK, and I think they're bad. And you know what's so weird is I never see people do the same thing for other AD carries. Like, I don't see anyone like really flaming Rahel right now. I don't see people being like I think Rahel is good, right? And I think he's in the same situation where his games are so fucked. Like, sure, you can like nitpick some of his deaths, and it's like, oh, well, you're down 11k gold at like 17 minutes. Why are you walking up on this mid wave? And then you could like be like, oh, Rahel is like bad or something. But his games are so unwinnable. It's like, what do you actually want the guy to do? Like, I don't see people do the same thing with like the average AD carry, which is why I just felt like it was overly targeted. It just doesn't seem like, it just doesn't seem like something that is normal. It's just like people wanted to fill their narrative of Upset being a passive KDA player with the fact that he was losing.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and obviously you got a really good eye on that, and his form pretty solid so far on this split. All right, Jamada, you go again. So that way we snake draft it. Give me your second pick here for your most improved player.
So I've been thinking on it because again, Dom sniped Isla from me. I don't have any back reference though on my second claim. I really liked Loki. I don't know what he was doing in career challenges, right? But Loki on C9, I think he had a really good first set of series to me. Again, I don't know where the bar is. I don't know how he was doing it in career challenges, so I have no back reference. But I'm going to assume that how he played in NA was even better than how he played last year. I'm just throwing a dart on the board here, because otherwise I feel like the other options that I could maybe bring up feel there's a lot of arguments to say nah. Like, I would maybe consider Hylissang if you remove that one Leona game and say like, hey, he's had a relatively consistent split otherwise. So yeah, I'm gonna throw up Loki just because I feel like C9 have so far played around him very well. They've given him drafts where he's pretty much always got a very solid function, and I think he's just looked really well and rounded. And I think it's kind of what C9 have needed, given the whole situation of everything that happened in the off season, losing Jojo and such. So I'm gonna nominate Loki and say, even though I don't know where his bar was last year, that he came in and he's had a very, very good showing for his debut in NA.
I think that's a good one. And it, again, just for context, it it's telling of the infrastructure that's been put in place that we've been, and when Monty was on here too, very critical of Cloud9, where it was before it was Mithy and the boys, and then it was Reapered and the boys, and not a lot of structure that was in there. Then you got High in there. He was, when I went and visited the team, he was in there. You have Reaper speaking Korean to him. You have Anero that's in there now. Vagar was like in the Discord watching the scrims and then giving feedback as well. That whole infrastructure to help support him there with Thanatos have already been there. It feels much more set for success for a new player to come on in, despite losing JoJo, despite Berserker moving on, he was already comfortable. Yeah. It felt very much so like we're a place where you can come and find success and not have to just hope that you're okay in the kind of the way that like maybe Saint and Henna are feeling right now over in Lyon. Dom, what do you think of that one there with Loki being nominated?
Yeah, I think Loki's looked good. I mean, he like when you watch him play, obviously there's some like situations that are rough. Like I could see like coordination issues in the game. Like for example, that game 2 they had versus FlyQuest where he's like Yone, like they're first on mid, and then he kind of botched his like ult, so the fight was harder than it should have been. But it kind of ended up being good in a way because since he wasted his ult, FlyQuest, who should have been losing that fight super hard, I mean, they're fighting like an all-in with a Smolder versus a Yone at level 6. It actually ended up being a good thing because FlyQuest was like, oh man, like Loki wasted his ult, maybe we could fight. So there was some situations that I think are rough, but I think this is what you're looking for when you import an LCK Challengers player. Like we've seen this with most of the imports that have came over, is like they're very good individually, and it's just about how they can incorporate themselves into the team and how the team can really utilize a player that has good mechanics, good laning, etc.
Yeah. Final glow up for you here, Dom.
Honestly, I think Gumayushi's been looking a lot better recently. Like he learned how to play Kai'Sa, he learned how to play Ezreal, he learned how to play Zeri. Like I thought he just wasn't going to be able to play any of these champions. So the fact that T1 now has the ability to play all these like mobility AD carries just makes them even scarier than before. So I would say the glow up of T1's AD carry Gumayushi has been really nice to watch.
This has been the Into the AM go up. Make sure to go to intotheam.com, use the code /LFN for 10% off during their anniversary sale on top of the 50% that they have. All right. Thanks, man. God. Even if you were going to break the rules of like not using a player in the West, or I feel like you could have gone with like, I don't know, Showmaker or something like with.
I would have went with okay. If I was gonna go LCK, I would have went Lucid. If I was to do a real one, I would have went Vulcan because I think that Vulcan for the last 2 years he just like didn't look like anything special. Like I just felt like I felt like I wasn't even watching like Vulcan, because I remember him being in the conversation with like being the best support in NA. It was like him versus Core JJ, who's the best support in NA. That was like the discussion for a long period of time, and no one else is in the conversation. And I thought that this week he actually played like really well. If you watch his games, I mean, the thing that really won them that huge fight in game number 2 and turned the pace of the series was the Alistar combo in that fight. I mean, he got like 3-man Alistar combo. And yeah, that was really nice. And then the game number 3, the Bard game, I thought he played extremely well as well. Like he was just all over the place, good ults. Like I don't know, he just looked super clean on the Bard as well. So yeah, I don't know. I thought he's been playing a lot better. He looked like he was running the games, and that's the type of confidence I like to see out of a player. Just feels like he found himself again.
Yeah, always weird and disappointing when a player loses the it, especially when Vulcan's been the North American $1 million man when he originally joined Cloud9, and the confidence that he exuded. It's setting the tweet to a timer and tweeting that out, putting whatever support gap or whatever he wrote. What did he write on his forehead with a marker? I forgot what it was.
Yeah, it was like when people were writing like when Brands wrote like 80 carry gap, and then like all of the players in LCS were just writing stuff on their heads.
Yeah, like it was difficult to do that when you're not having the play to back that up, and it's great to see Vulcan back on that train and finding success there. So, who do you think is the biggest glow up here in the West? Or you can throw in your LCK glow up as well and compete with the Guma one if you want. Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to check out intotheam.com for their anniversary sale. Use the code LFN and support your boys. Thank you. All right. We're about halfway done with the show. A little bit shorter because shorter week. It's time to remind you about one of our friends, though, that has supported the show throughout the last year, and it's our friends over at AG1. It's also time to check in on the New Year resolutions that everyone's been doing. Like, have you all been keeping up? I know that Jamada now has less excuses because he got his package of AG1, helping him to a healthier gut health and helping live a healthier life. How does it taste, Jamada?
It's nice. I wasn't actually sure because I've never had like health supplement stuff ever before. I rock with it. Hell, and my mum likes it too. Gave some to my mum. My mum had some. My mother's been enjoying it as well. So it's actually been starting off my days quite right. So yeah, I'm very happy with what I've gotten at the minute.
Good. Well, I'm sure that you'll continue to join me and Dom as implementing it as a nutritional supplement to your healthy lifestyle and supporting your immune health. And again, tastes pretty good when you take a look at health drinks. They don't normally look like they taste great. This one tastes very, very good, and it has supported our lives and supported the show. And if you want to go ahead and try it, get yourself on a consistent health kick, have AG1 be a part of that process, and you can do that now by ordering some AG1. We'll do that here at drinkag1.com/LFNlegends to get our offer that we've been talking about for a while. Our new subscribers getting a $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get the welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs for your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/LFNlegends to get the offer. That's drinkag1.com/LFNlegends to kick off your new year on a healthier note. Thanks to our friends over at AG1. All right. We were a little too positive, and Dom leaked out the Gumayushi taunt, but now it's time to get the toxicity out a little bit by doing a bit of rank 'em. And it's time to rank the teams that are saying goodbye until April. That's right. We're talking BNK FearX. We're talking about SK Gaming. We're talking about Paycheck, Stealer in the mid lane, Rogue, Disguised, that one's a little sad, and Leon, which is unfortunate situations, but again, the way that format works out is the way that it's going to go. So rank them. Who is the most disappointing? That is our ranking here of those 5 teams. Let's get to it. All right. Let's start with you, Dom. You can give us your 5th least disappointing. So not the most disappointing. We'll go 5 to 1. You go first. Who is your 5th?
I would say that, like, in terms of like my expectations, that's kind of what I'm doing it against. I would say that my 5th, so my least disappointing, would be Lion Gaming, because they didn't even have their support. Like their support has just not been in the country yet. So they have to play with their support on ping. They apparently only got 3 days of scrims before they played against Cloud9. So they've had just a time where I feel like you can't really expect this team to be good immediately. Also, if you consider their players, they have triple language barrier on this roster. Like they have one player from Peru, one player I believe from Argentina, one player or 2 players from Korea, 1 player from Canada. So it's like I would just expect it to be a mess, and the fact that they were able to do decently, I think, showed me something. When they played their series against Shopify, I mean, I thought they looked like they could have won that series, whereas Shopify had been playing. I mean, even though they don't have their support as well, like they did a Korean boot camp. Like these guys have been playing together for way longer, and they're players that are experienced in the LCS. Where you're playing with 2 players that are recent LCS champions, and then Fudge, who also I guess you'd consider him a recent LCS champion as well. after his championship in 2023. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought that this team would be worse than they were, and I could actually see the potential of some of the players. Like I thought Saint looked good. I thought Henna looked good at times, and it just came down to the fact that they just weren't that coordinated. So I would say that their placing is the most forgivable in my eyes.
There we go. Jamada, who is your fifth? Who you got?
I'll probably put DSG there instead, I think.
Okay.
I would expect the floor to be a little bit higher with a team with Abadage, who at least in recency, from what I've seen, I can't recall his most, because I know he came back to NA, didn't he? No, he didn't. No, because he came. Sorry, so he came to Europe. So yeah, from what I remember from Abadage from last year and his overall and Huhi, I would have expected the DSG floor to be a little bit higher. Now, I know that seems unfair because everyone kind of just thinks DSG, like, they'll be the worst team regardless. But even with that, I don't really feel like I was super enamored or particularly happy with their play in general. And from speaking with some reps across the pond as well, even players like XU, Scary Jerry, falling a little bit below the mark of roughly where they should have been, but still very harsh, and very cynical critiques nonetheless. I think compared to Leon's, where it's like you have all of these yes, barriers, I feel like there's still maybe a little bit more of like, I don't know. It's if you're kind of a complete outsider, it might be harder to judge Leon. Whereas to me, I feel like with DSG, there was at least known quantities, and said known quantities still didn't perform. So I would still place, I feel like, DSG in fifth and Leon in fourth, but they would be, right next to each other.
Okay. What do you make of the Leon shortcomings then here, Jamada? Since we're probably just flipping the.
I have a feeling we're probably flipping. I mean, I have a lot of the same. Like, for me, I just don't judge the things that Dom said about Leon as like harshly. I think it's kind of, or like I judge them kind of about equally, but I feel like with DSG, it's like, yeah, I'm kind of on the same board with Dom. For me, my placement comes fifth, fourth. It's just slightly flipped,
Yeah. Dom, is your fourth team disguised here, or were you sliding in a different team?
No, my fourth team is disguised. I think that it was kind of a flip for me. I would just think that DSG should have like slightly higher floor when I think about when I think about like Abadage. I thought that they would be a little bit better than a team that actually like can't even be in the same place at the same time. So also I think they had like, I guess I would say they had easier competition as well. Like this Dig roster, I mean, they were playing with Lyra for a while, and then they just got to sub in Shaden, and Dig didn't even look like good in the game. So I feel like when you're playing with multiple players that have won North America, there should be like some level of expectation that they'll be able to like have a pretty high floor, and the floor just wasn't really there for Disguised. Also, I think the Scary Jerry pickup, it's like very random to me. Like I don't know what he's good at. I didn't watch Academy. I played with the guy a lot in solo queue. I always thought he was like a very puzzling player because he was always super high rated. But whenever I got to play with him, I never felt like he was like a freak the same way that other AD carries that are really high on the ladder are freaks. Like, for example, Masu, I mean, part of the reason, like, I judge a lot of players off like my experience playing with them if I haven't watched them play competitive. And when I was playing with Masu, part of the reason I hyped him up so much last year is because he just felt like he had like the insane mechanical ability, which is like something that you want to see at an AD carry, and you assume that if you put players around that type of guy with knowledge, they're going to be insane. I feel like Scary Jerry is in a situation where he's playing with Abadagi, he's playing with Hui. I mean, Hui's played in LCS forever, right? So yeah, I wanted to see him show more of like his mechanical ability, but he looks very like flustered. I feel like he doesn't read fights super well. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm not sure if he's a LTA North ready AD carry. So I just feel like Disguised shouldn't have been as bad as they were.
The tough part with that, because I've seen Scary Jerry now for such a long time hosting collegiate championships. He was over at Maryville. Like, you can't ask for a better program than that. The only issue that comes with that is he was surrounded by other talent where maybe he didn't need to be the playmaker as much. I think early on in his career, he was a little bit more of that freak, and then later on became more of like a cleanup 80 carry. And now in this roster that doesn't have a ton of firepower, like I think he's still getting his footing, but the way that this format works out, it's super brutal. It's so brutal that they're done with competitive matches already. I hope that they give him time. I hope they give him at least a split, this next split that's coming up, and he shows at least the thing that everyone's been talking about. But you guys are right. You know, when I was watching the co-streams and stuff, specifically watching Jerry, just to see if like we could get some of that collegiate magic, and it didn't quite translate here in that first split. All right, so 5-4 are our NA teams. That was pretty convenient. Who do you got third here, Dom? Who is your third least? We got SK, Rogue, and BNK FearX.
I'll go BNK FearX.
Oh my god, okay.
And the reason is simply they have Vikla on their team. So I thought they would probably end up being like pretty bad, and they ended up being pretty bad. So like it is what it is. You know, it was a situation where, I mean, Vikla obviously, like, he had like a kind of decent split towards the end of LPL, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I just think that this roster is so all over the place. I don't understand the formation of this roster. I feel like when you look at the other rosters, there's like, they're trying to add rookies around like veterans that have like the ability to lead games, but when you look at this BNK FearX roster, it's like, who thought putting Kellen and Vikla with like rookies essentially would be good? And like, I know Raptor's not technically a rookie, and Clear is not technically a rookie either. Like, they've been playing for a while now, but to me, they're like the young players that I feel like haven't really found their footing in LCK to be like consistently good. Like, you see moments of you know, brilliance, you see like good mechanics, but you don't see them having like the consistency that makes you believe that they just know how to win LCK games. So, oh, dGon's left.
Goodbye, dGon. He has been smited on so many occasions by telecom internet.
Wait,
So
isn't Korea supposed to have like super insane internet?
So I'm told. I don't think it's supposed to be bad.
You have
it's supposed to be super insane.
So what what telecom provider do you have? Call them out here.
I have SK Telecom internet.
Oh, okay. Who could have seen that coming? That's crazy, bro. Damn.
It is crazy. I was able to hear because I switched to my phone, which is also not on SK. And look at that, it worked. Like, I was able to switch to my phone and listen to the rest of the show. So yes, I heard your points. My points about Vikla. I'm not sure if I'm gonna get in trouble. I don't care. It's so annoying. My point about Vikla is, in the Korean circles, he has not looked the way that we've seen him. Like, we got to see him over at FlyQuest. You continued to have to watch that over with Thunder Talk.
Not the,
he's like,
he was on Rare Adam.
Rare Adam. Sorry, yeah, Rare Adam. And it was like, it's just so interesting. They still speak of him like he was that same rookie, the same rookie that came out of KT that won like Rookie of the Year and all that stuff. And my man just needs some help. He needs some draft help. He needs. Oh god! I
don't think draft help is saving Vikla at this point.
I think it's a little bit of draft. He just needs some wins. That's a guy who's done the last 2 years filled with losing. Like, that's so brutal. Like, your confidence leaves you.
I mean, when he was on FlyQuest, they got like what, like third, fourth, I guess technically in spring,
and then last. That collapse. He got replaced by trivia time, everyone. Do you remember SpearX? I was gonna ask Jamada because I knew you knew. Like,
I wouldn't have been able to have given you that.
Yeah. Also product from Maryville. But yeah, so I think he just needs a little bit of help. Get him some wins and get him rolling again. Jamada,
he's lost confidence.
Yeah. I have the same ranking because I think we all know who I'm putting 1, 2. Actually, more specifically, we know who I'm putting 1, then byproduct of who needs to go 2. So,
all right, go shit on SK.
Needs to go 3. You know, I don't get how SK have landed how they have with. Well, no. Let me rephrase. I know why they've landed the way that they have, right?
Okay.
Isma doesn't have as clear a guide anymore with Niski, right? I think that Niski was a big, like a boy for SK that kind of kept them at a certain floor. I also think that Swiffer had a lot of impact on how this team probably viewed the game philosophically in their drafts. Otherwise, though, you go from having one of the best individual top laners to Genax, and then you go from having one of the best facilitators in the league to having Rico, who, no disrespect to Rico, because Rico had a fantastic year on BDS Academy, but he's come back and his debut is stinking up the place again. His re-debut is stinking up the place again, much like it did, with the Mad roster. Was it 22 or 21? I want to say it was 22. The spring split, where he comically actually got replaced by Niski in the end. So we've done a bit of a circle round. But even with that in mind, it just feels like SK are not showing up to play like at all. The entire team is just really disjointed, and it's weird because Genax and Rika both come from that same BDSA Academy roster that everyone had super high props for, and they've come in and they're just worse. Like, they are just worse. And I feel like in the bot lane you have Poor Hell, who is just kind of a passenger, like Dom was mentioning earlier with when we was on the AD's topic with Upset. He's kind of just existing, and he never really gets to play the game. And we saw some pretty decent peaks out of Rahel throughout 2024. But again, now we just have a significantly worse version of SK, and it's like it's getting up to a point where it's frustration of how long will SK just kind of stay doo-doo and never like break into the top echelon, So they are my second place team because we know who has to take the throne. We know who's in the throne. But yeah, that's where I'll stop for now, because yeah, SK, it's doing my head in, and it's more of a long-term expectations of, damn, these guys, like, we're not expecting you to do crazy, but like, come on, man, like, wake up, be present at least in the games is like my sentiment with them right now.
Dom, you've talked about the fact that these were the BDS guys. You've used this roster as the example of like the step up from Masters to LEC. What more do you have to say for them? I'm assuming ranking them second.
I mean, for me, it's just like, if you come back into the league after like completely dominating ERLs like Rieger and Genax, I just expect more out of you.
Mind you, it was LFL as well. It wasn't even just like any other. Like, the LFL is unequivocally the best ERL in the system. Just as a, like, on top of everything else.
Yeah, no, and then they also like won EU Masters, right? So like, this team was supposed to be super insane. And the players all had a lot of value coming in. And Rieger, like, I don't know, man. I'm like, I just don't see what he's even good at. Like, I don't know any of his strengths. I watched 9 games of him play, and I have no idea what his strengths are. Like, how did he even win in BDS Academy? What were his strengths? Like, I have no idea what they could have been, because I don't think he's a good facilitator. It doesn't seem like he's a good laner. It doesn't seem like he's a good carry player. It doesn't seem like he has extremely good side laning. I feel like I don't see anything out of Rieger. Like, his Galio play was some of the worst I've seen. And then Jedax, like, I'm willing to give him another shot. Like, if this guy, like, there were some moments where I thought he was good in LEC. Generally, I thought he was like pretty like mediocre, but him coming back into the league, I just wanted to see more out of him. I'm like, okay, Jedax, what did you get better at? And especially, he did his interview and I listened to it, and he's like, yeah, like, I'm the top laner before, I'll kind of be a passenger, but now I'm the type of top laner that I will either like win the game, or I'll like, like die a lot trying to win the game. Like, I'm going to be that type of guy. I didn't even feel like that. I didn't feel like he was making like he was making profitable plays, or he was making plays that are that had like a level of intention behind them, and he's doing his best to try to carry the game. He just did look like a passenger, and he was just like with the team losing. I mean, that's solo laners. Isma, I don't think this guy's ever gonna be it, man. Like, I just think he just doesn't have it. He had like a good week 1 in winter of last year, and I feel like that's carried his reputation for the last 2 years now. Like, he is somebody who I see as one of the worst junglers in the league. I don't see like any of the redeemable qualities from him either. I think Rahel is innocent on this team. Like, he hasn't done anything wrong. But Loopy is just another player. Like I feel so I really don't like when imports come into a league. Like if you're a Korean import and you come into like a lesser league, I want to see you like actually perform. I feel like you have an obligation to be one of the better players in the league, or at least like a better part of your team. And I feel like Loopy just comes in and he's just been like shitting the bed. Like I don't even know why they got rid of Luan. But yeah, I really dislike seeing like imports come in and just like be a generally bad player in the league, because I just feel like, what is the point of, why did you even import this guy in the first place? Is it just because he's Korean and you wanted to have like a Korean bot lane? Is that the idea? So that like Rahel could communicate easier or something? I just don't see what what good qualities he has either. So for the most part, like the only reason I don't have them number one is because they don't actually make me angry the way that Rogue makes me angry. Like they're just like kind of a sad team. Like they're just like, SK is just a pathetic and sad team. And like when I watch them, I'm just like disappointed in everyone. And yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my emotions there.
All right, I have to ask for both of you, just because I was thinking about when we look at articles from colleagues in the space, we got to give them credit. So this one was the LEC Wooloo salary unveiled report. Do you feel like for Rogue, figuring out the salary and what happened there and how it all works added to the fuel that's happening for how poorly they're doing?
Yes.
I have my headphones on. I'll be right back. So just keep going.
Okay. Enjoy dGon. I think it probably did, but I feel like there has been a brewing discontent for Rogue for the last 4 splits, because they have just not gotten better no matter what they've done. Like it has just been, they've just been shit and they've been boring. And I've been calling them philosophically flaccid for months, and this statement just holds true. Like Rogue systematically does not do anything to try and like break the meta or like anything inventive or create nothing. It is just the same version of them trying to play like slow Korean style League of Legends, and then someone always fucks up along the sequence. That was like the big thing for me last year whenever I'd watch their games, was their setups would be slow and meticulous, but then it would be like Zoella's fucks up and gets caught in the middle of the setup. So it's like, cool, they've just spent 2 minutes setting up for an objective that they don't get to play for, and then they don't do anything on the bounce back. Like there's no recovery play. And it's been more of that, but kind of arguably worse, because they're not even getting to the points where they're trying to set up for objectives a lot of the time. And yeah, I think the criticism is just very valid at every point, and I think that article about Larson having, you know, a €500,000 contract at kind of the floor seemingly is the number being floated around, just kind of emphasizes the whole like, okay, there's 2, technically 3 consistents of this kind of air quotes iteration of Rogue. One of them is Larson, one of them is the head coach Freddie 112, or is it Freddie 122? Freddie 122.
112.
112. And then of course the GM.
Wait, no, is it
right?
Is it Freddie 122? It's Freddie 122. Yeah,
it's Freddie 122, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fly. And I'm normally, and especially because, you know, I've just spent 2.5 plus 3 years on Riot Broadcast, I'll never be the first guy to be like, yo, we need to get rid of this guy, or like this guy has to go. But bro, Larson and Fly are not making, Larson and Freddie are not making a good argument for them to remain on the team, at all, bro, at all. So I'm more frustrated specifically with the fact that we've seen so many roster changes, and philosophically, the way that they draft, the way that they play, everything remains the same. So the only thing that you can really point to at this point, no matter how bad the rest of the roster plays, no matter how bad Maorang like runs it on you know, the first 5 minutes of every game, no matter what, the main 2 consistent factors of Rogue for the last however many years has been these 2/3. So to me, if I'm a Rogue fan, I want to see change. One of these 3 has to go, or 2 of these 3 have to go. Something has to shift, because clearly changing everything else hasn't worked. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, I just hate watching Rogue play. Like they're the team that makes me the most angry. In general, I just feel like even though the early games are slightly better, when I think about who they got, right, what I expected is like, oh, you have Malrung and Execute being psychopaths. If you did not show me the nameplates, I would never be able to guess that this was Execute. I would never be able to guess that this was Jung. Like Jonghoon, when he was in the LEC, was
on the Astralis
like
lineup, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was a psychopath, right? He had like the pike mechanics, like he had like the insane plays. He was somebody who, you know, didn't have the best like fundamental support pool, but when he got his picks, he would like completely smurf on the game. And yeah, like then now when I'm watching him, it just feels like he's just your average support. And obviously part of it is probably playing with Patrick. But even Malrung doesn't look the same. Like old Malrung used to be the guy who would go down like insane amounts of farm and he'd be all over the place, like ganking, pressuring everything. So I don't even feel like they have the same players that they like tried to get, or they've just like beat them into submission where they're like, oh, like in reviews, you're into here, like this type of stuff. And it's like, okay, so yes. If players are going to try to make plays, they are going to int more, right? Like, because if you are trying to make a play, there's going to be multiple ways that play can actually go. Yeah. Completely understandable. But if you try to make it so it's like, oh, you inted here, so don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, then you just end up being a do-nothing team. And I feel like that's what we've actually got with Rogue all the time. It feels like they just don't have like a path forward. Like, I don't even know what they're trying to do in games. Like, half the games I watch, they just get a lead, and then, like, Patrick just, like, walks up too far on a mid-wave, and then they just, like, die in the middle of mid lane, and the whole game explodes. Like, I don't actually know what Rogue's path is towards victory, because it's not even like the team doesn't have decent game states. It's not like they're all getting shit on so hard that they're not able to play the game. It's just they have, like, horrible decision-making. And the one thing that I said about them is there's just a collective stupidity about League of Legends on the team. Like the IQ of the team is on average low. So that's not saying every player is stupid, but like the average is low. So either one player is dragging it the fuck down or what. But when you look at like the team decisions, there is no thought going on in this because they lose games the same way. It's like you just walk up mid lane and then it's like, yeah, you can't be in the middle of mid lane with your like 80 carry at this timing. And then they just die and they lose the game. Or they do like weird shit where they like start Otacon in the face of like all of G2 and they're just tanking Otacon. And the takeaway from the fans is like, oh, Larson should like flash W here.
Yeah, that was
and dumb. I'm like, what the fuck does that do? This is like if I was playing a game and I started Otacon in this situation, my teammates would tell me to get cancer. Like that's what would happen. Like if I tried to call my team to do an Otacon like this, I would get death threats. I'd be told to get diseases. It would be super fucked up. But like they do it in like a pro game and it's like, you guys know that this is bad. Why would you ever do this? And it's because of like a desperation in the game or whatever. So for me, I don't know how they consistently make such bad decisions because they do have a lot of veterans. Like that is their thing. Their whole team is veterans. So for me, I'm way more critical and I'm way less tolerant of people being super stupid about macro when they've been playing a long time. Like how long have these players been playing? What's the average amount of career? Like at this point, Adam's been playing since 2021. You have Larson, who's been playing since 2020. You have Junghoon, who's probably like the most rookie player. Patrick's been playing since like 2018 or some bullshit with H2K. You have Malrung, who's been playing since he was in Korea. I mean, he's been playing for at least 3-4 years. Like, how are you guys so dumb about the game still? I don't understand. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me because don't you have like one guy on your team who's like, hey, this is fucking int. Let's not do this. Like, if you don't, that's the problem in and of itself. But the accuracy of their decisions is like terrible. It's like, if they were doing like a chess.com thing, it'd be like blunder, inaccuracy, blunder, blunder. And then it's like, okay, now the game is fucking over. Like, it's so pathetic. So for me, I really hate watching them play. And I just think they have no business being as bad as they are. Like, I thought that this team would start with a pretty high floor and it would be like middle of the pack. They should have been like 6th place, 7th place, something like that. How the fuck is Heretics better than you? When you have this lineup and Heretics has that lineup, how the fuck is Heretics not 10th place in this region? Like something is wrong with you if you are able to go 1-8 in this format versus the teams that you're playing against. You can't just like you can't get wins on hand diff. You can't get wins on like out macroing. You can't be like smarter than teams. You can't transition early leads. Like what do you guys actually fucking do well? They do nothing well, and then they're just gonna stay in the league again. Okay, nice. We get to watch them play best of threes. You know how dreaded that's gonna be watching them play a single round robin of best of threes, 9 fucking best of threes. Like that's gonna be just. It's going to be unwatchable, bro.
I did a backflip when they were mathematically eliminated from like the next portion of play, man. I don't know. Like Dom, you broke it down analytically. I'm more emotional, man. Like this team just needs to for me, again, you have these three consistencies. You've changed everything else around the roster, but the style of play remains the same. Something is stinky. And Rika's not on this team. Think about it. Rika's not on this team. So yeah, to me, it's come to a point now where I think it's Larson, it's Freddy, it's like GM for those two not have like being shifted out of the roles. Like 1, 2, or 3 has to be changed, and I don't know how that happens. But I think Rogue need to start trying to look to take some initiative here, because average 9.5 place in 4 splits is like a crazy stat. Like organizationally, they are going bar for bar with what Upset's run was. Think about that for a second.
It's Immortals level. Immortals level bad.
I mean, the other thing is, if it's actually true that Larson hasn't hit Challenger in 2 years, like that is crazy. Like if that's actually true and he doesn't have a secret account, then that is like completely insane. Because that means that he's letting an old man get Challenger at times where he's not even Challenger. Like, there's no way you can let me fucking get Challenger more recently than you if you're a pro player. I think if you're a pro player, you should just be Challenger pretty much all the time. Like you have the time for, you're probably playing 4 to 5 hours of solo queue, and it's not that fucking hard. If you're playing the game all the time and your mechanics are there, at that point, it's just like mental. It's just like, hey, just don't fucking mental boom in solo queue at the first mistake and just play the game out and you'll end up, being decent. And when you hear about how most players get out of slumps, when most players are in big slumps, they just grind solo queue and they get high rated in solo queue because that gives you confidence. Like that is what gives players confidence. If you are like top 10 in solo queue, you're like, damn, I'm playing well right now. Just winning a lot of games is good. If you're losing games on stage, win games somewhere else. If you're losing games in scrims and on stage, play some solo queue and win some fucking games. And then you'll have some more confidence going into like your next matches, because at least if you're getting high rated in solo queue, you'll be competing in solo queue against the players that you're playing against on stage. And it'll be like, hey, look, I have the capability to beat these players. These players are not much better than me. I really dislike when I see players not care about solo queue at all when they're supposed to be like a top tier pro. So I'm just gonna say, like, yeah, if that is true, I'm not saying it is true because I don't know if he has a secret account or not. That's a narrative that's being spread. If that is true, it's completely fucking disgraceful.
Bam. There it is. They've been ranked backwards to forwards. Calls for former pros back in the 2014 season. Maybe time to replace him. That's right. We're talking about Ryu and Freddy, of course, but Ryu as well. All right. Let's do you agree with these rankings? There we go. That's I was like, what's the transition here? Do you agree with these rankings? Let us know in the comments. And who or what needs to be fixed so these teams can find some success in the future. All right, before we get to our last topic of the evening, time to bring you the deal that we got that I use all the time. That's right. We're talking about our friends over at Raycon earbuds. In this season of love, because Valentine's Day is coming up, it's time to acknowledge our unique love languages. And I think there's one that we can all agree on: the love of sound. Discover true love's perfect pair, Raycon's everyday earbuds. The earbuds are perfect for going to the gym, work, or phone calls, offering premium audio everywhere that you go. And again, I lost these like a couple of months ago. When I went back to the States, I bought another pair on my own dime using our code PowerSpike because they were so dang good. It's a 32-hour battery life. It's just not 10 minutes of charging for 90 minutes of listening. So if you're one of those people that like lets it charge all the way down, don't worry. Raycon's quick charge function has you covered. And also it comes with active noise cancellation, which is often difficult to find, but it's difficult to find at an accessible price point, but not with Raycon, because it just starts at just half of the price of other premium audio brands. And Raycon comes in a lot of different colors. Obviously, we had the black. Now I've gone with the periwinkle, the purple, comes with blue, I think red as well. There's like gunmetal that goes with it. So a lot of great different styles and colors and different earbuds for all you people that got weird ears. I mean, I'm sure once Jamada takes off those headphones, you got some weird shaped ears. So go to buyraycon.com/powerspike to get 20% off site wide. That's right. You'll get 20% off everything on Raycon's website, including 20% off all headphones too, when you go to buyraycon.com/powerspike. That's buyraycon.com/powerspike to get 20% off. Thanks to our friends over at Raycon. No LPL this week. LCK, pretty short, pretty straightforward week, except Smash playing for Guma, which was the consistent. So that was the big question if everyone had. So a lot of our Galaxy Brain Club discussion this week will be on the LTA North. We got to see who got knocked out, and also probably the biggest upsets so far in the top level of League of Legends. Like, you know, everyone pretty much almost in pen as much as you could any game. TL FlyQuest moving on through. Not so fast, my friends. They got upset, and that's the topic of our Galaxy Brain Club. Let's get to it. Guys, did you see an upset happening by 100 Thieves or Cloud9? Especially given how dominant FlyQuest was in their first win, how dominant TL was in their first win, and all the smack talk that came with it. Dom, let's start with you, man.
I think FlyQuest looked a lot better personally than TL did. I think TL looked more prime for an upset because just had a really bad initial series. Like, I mean, he was borderline like solo losing the game on Wukong. So I could see maybe TL being upset by 100 Thieves because TL is a team that wants to just have better setups. They want to have better macro. And it feels like 100 Thieves have become slightly more intelligent as a team, and their mechanics have been really good still. So I feel like that's why they're doing so well right now. But FlyQuest, I think they look so dominant in the way that they play the game is normally a lot more controlled. I feel like Inspired is just a hard player to beat. Like, he just doesn't make that many mistakes. So I would have said that 100 Thieves upset over TL was more likely, but I was surprised to see 2 upsets. Like, I was happy about that.
Jamada?
Yeah, same kind of board. I was a little bit more I was definitely surprised at the C9 result too. But you know what? Narratively, for all of the shit talk that Bwipo was giving out, in a way, as much as I love what Bwipo's doing, I hope it kind of humbles him a little bit, but I probably won't. And that FlyQuest kind of bounced back, because FlyQuest, as an outsider, right? LCS something I've only really tapped back into since like back end of Worlds, right? In terms of storylines and narratives. I want to see this FlyQuest roster do well, man. I think that they really earned a lot of faith from that Gen G series, perhaps even too much faith, right? But that said, I think it would absolutely suck for them to continue to suck. I don't think they're going to suck against Dig. And like Dom said, I think TL very primed for that upset. And I think if Umpty does not remember that he is allowed to play normal League of Legends, that when it comes to the next round, because my assumption is Fly will be Dig, TL should be Shopify, that when they rematch, Fly will just win. Like, Fly will just win. Like, Umpty will just solo lose the game if he keeps on playing how he is right now. And speaking with some of the guys over from NA, all of the kind of changes from 24 to 25 also really tee up to just kind of shit on Team Liquid and how formulaic they were throughout all of last year. One stat line that I found quite interesting was they had one of the lower, maybe the lowest, I'm not going to throw an arbitrary number on it, but looking by team, they had some of the lowest champion diversity out of any team in NA throughout last year. So stuff like Fearless is really, really going to hurt them. One of their shortcomings has always been, again, I'm being fed this information and learning it myself as I watch now, has been their team fighting. This year is all about skirmishing and team fighting. And if Umpty, junglers are always the biggest pillar of that bridge for basically every team system. And if Umpty is performing like how he is, TL will not be able to actually function, right? I think that's going to be a really, really big problem for them. I think more or less, I'm not sure how Dom feels. I feel like the rest of the team has been possibly acceptable.
Yeah,
I just feel like it's predominantly coming from Umpty, unfortunately.
Dom, you got two paths to go here. Either you start with Whippo or start with Umpty Man, because I know you got opinions on both.
I mean, I think for Umpty, so last year he was one of the players that wasn't really playing this like Zyra brand meta. If you remember how TL was playing back then, he was just locking Sejuani Maokai like every single fucking game. Like he was just always locking Sejuani Maokai. I mean, I could probably pull up the stats for how many games it was, but he was the type of guy that wasn't willing to actually play a lot of the different styles. And the thing about Umpty that scares me is that he is a player that has in general like had a losing career. Like he has lost so much. Like he's 40% win rate with like 600 games or like something, or 700 games, something absolutely insane. And yeah, I mean, he played like one game of brand, I think, at Worlds. Outside of that, it was like no brand, no Zyra. Now he's trying to play it on stage. It doesn't look like his positioning is good on it. It doesn't seem like he knows how to lead the game. And I feel like he's somebody who's in his own head. Like a lot of the mistakes that he's making are just really like random. Like, I mean, the amount of times he died in that game, that wasn't that hard of a Vi game. Like it wasn't a game that should be that impossible for him. And he's just going in and dying permanently. And he just seems like somebody who might be like mentally fragile. I mean, you remember seeing the interviews at Worlds. Like it just seems like he was the type of guy that, when things start going bad, he like really spirals and gets in his own head. And he's like, oh, maybe I'm just like a loser, like this type of stuff. Like it just seems like that comes out a lot in his play, where it just becomes like, it just looks like he's tilted. Like it just looks like over aggression. It looks like he just, I don't think that it is the case, but it looks like he doesn't care about his own life in the game. Like he's just throwing his body at the enemy team over and over again and just like chain inting so much. So yeah, I'm pretty worried about him. Also, when I think about like their team, the person who I think would be able to handle situations like this when a player is just underperforming is Spawn. Like Spawn in person has like the aura of a coach. He seems like he's the type of guy to take you one-on-one and be like, Umpty, like this is a problem. Like, and like, he understands the psychological aspects of coaching and like how to build up a player and like integrate them into the team. So I think Spawn being remote is actually really bad for Umpty going through this level of a slump. And yeah, I mean, it is just kind of like him solo ruining the games at this point. Like there's no other way to put it. Like he set that the LCS death record. Like this is crazy, man. Like we've had, like I played an 80-minute game. How many times did I die in a fucking 80-minute game? I played an 80-minute game in LCS. I couldn't hit 12 deaths. You know how crazy it is to hit 12 deaths? Like
I'm gonna be his lawyer for half a second. The metas that you played in were like deaths were like rare. Like teams would just like not interact with each other for a long ass time. So I can give Umpty some grace.
Bro, we had 30,
compared to the comparison you're making.
30 kills in that game. How many kills?
But you are right. No, you're right. No. You're right. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I'm just saying, look, you might have only dropped like 2 or 3 deaths in like an 80-minute game.
Fucking lawyer is this, man? As soon as you
I'm just saying,
backpedaling.
No, because this is like some soft self-glazing from Dom. I've got to try and put my co-host in his place a little bit. It was a different game. I reckon if you played League of Legends in this version of League of Legends, you would drop high, like not umpty levels of deaths, but you would occasionally drop like a 8 or 9 death game, right?
I mean, I think 8 or 9 deaths. It depends on like timing. Like the thing about this is like look at Umpty's deaths compared to like Blabber's game. I thought Blabber's game was significantly harder to play. Like his Vi game, he's playing into like Zyra plus Casio, like, and it's just like, oh my god, and they're losing. It's like, how the fuck do you play this game? And he played a longer game and died less. Like, and they were losing the entire game. Like Umpty has like the ability to just like not run it down, and he's just choosing to run it down. Like it is actually crazy the amount of times that he's like finding ways to die. And he's not finding ways to die where it's like, yeah, it's just a scrappy game and he's like suiciding for engages. Just like, oh, he's caught. Oh, he's inting. Like, what is he doing here? Oh, he failed his mechanics. Whatever it is, it's just different ways to die. So I don't know. Personally, when I'm watching Umpty play, I just feel like he is like so lost. And this is why I generally don't like players that have not had the obligation to win before. Like somebody who's just spent their whole career losing. It's like acceptable for Bro to be shit. Like Bro is the type of org where like the way that the culture is around them, I don't know what it is inside the team, but like the way the fans and the social pressure works is like, if Bro does anything good, they're praised. And then when they just like run it down, it's like, haha, it's kind of funny. Yeah, bro, we're bro leavers, whatever. Like no one actually is hard on them when they're losing. Like nobody's like, what the fuck are you guys doing, bro? Like, why are you guys playing so fucking bad? What is this macro mistake? Like why are you inting so much? Like none of this stuff happens from the community pressure. So like, I don't think that Umpty has dealt with like the expectation and the obligation for winning. Like I don't think he's obligated to win in his other games. So, or in his other teams. So yeah, I just feel like this is like a very big issue, and I think that Spawn needs to get on a plane from Australia and just like. He needs to be that like father figure to Umpty like right now, like, you know, abroad, or I think things will just snowball so hard.
I love this just real quick because it's a really good call out, and whenever fans have a good nugget, we got to give them the shout out. Sergio Gabi said Umpty had more deaths than Keith McBreath did in any game. Keith McBreath. That's the name we haven't heard in a long time, so thank you for that one.
I mean, Stunts used to die like 8 times a game on Nautilus. Like that used to be the meme in my chat. It was like, oh, it's a Stunt Nautilus game. Like whether he played well or not, it was like he's just gonna die 8 times in the game. Like it just is what it is. How the fuck are you gonna die that much on Vi? Like Vi, you have a dash, you know, like you have a dash that's like you can choose when you go in most of the time. Like I don't know, it just seems so crazy to die on a champion like Vi, especially in a game where like think about in 30 minutes, like how long was the game? Like 30 minutes, 35 minutes, something like this.
It wasn't that long.
Like you have to be dying as soon as you spawn. You have to like spawn and then just run it directly down to die that many times. Like it's hard
exactly what happened.
It's hard to not just lose the game at like 10 deaths when you're inting that hard. It's actually insane. It's a credit to the rest of his team that they were able to actually drag the game on for so long with their Vi perma dying.
Yeah. A tough kind of pill here for Team Liquid on their loss, and with Umpty, and again, not a lot of fixes, not a lot of elbow grease that Spawn will be able to do. They do have Rainover, who's been with the organization for a long time.
Sub him in.
No. we saw junglers of that day already get their opportunity to play on Dignitas. I actually got to play soccer with Lyra here when I first moved to Korea. I went to a pickup thing and there were some like former players over there, and he was like, "Hey, do you remember me?" I was like, "Holy shit!" And then he was like, "Hey, I'm going to Dignitas." I was like, "Holy shit!" And then he was like subbing in. I was like, "Oh my god!" And then he looked terrible. I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry, man, but we don't need another sub jungler in there," and I'm sure Rainover would agree. On the opposite side. Let's take a look at the other upset with FlyQuest. Obviously, the Bwipo. Do you think the Bwipo thing was too much of a distraction, Dom? Like it was one of our comments in the show from last week. Like obviously, your stance is competitively doesn't make sense.
Well,
do you feel like it took away from too much?
I mean, I just don't know what the situation is. Like when they say streamed scrims, like what does this actually mean? Because when people are saying it's like similar to Los Ratones or Ready Sack, streamed scrims, if you're just showing the game, like if you're just playing games and you're just like, oh yeah, we're going to play a couple of standard games here. We're not going to go anything crazy. And then you're like muting your mic, or like you're not showing comms. You're not talking, like your reviews are still muted. If that's the case, then it's way different then it's not the Los Ratones or Ready Sack thing at all, because the whole thing is like you're showing the entire path towards improvement. So you're actually going to leak how people communicate. And that's the thing that I think could be really bad competitively. But if they're just playing like games, then it doesn't matter. So like, I feel like that's the thing that I'm excited to see in this set. Like, how is it actually going to be carried out? Because I think people said streamed scrims, and I don't know if people know what Los Ratones means. Like Los Ratones means that you're streaming yourself during draft, discussing how your champions are going to be picked. You're streaming like how the team communicates in the game. You're streaming how the review is done, the conclusions and the takeaways and all this stuff. That is what stuff you're actually trying to show here. So who knows what actually happens? Like if it's just playing games, like yeah, I mean you could watch the stage games as well. It's all the behind the scenes stuff that I would think would be the competitive like issue, is like people knowing exactly how your team functions, how they talk through like lane swaps, like what they do in these situations, that I think could be a really big competitive disadvantage. So I guess we'll see what ends up happening there today. I think the Bwipo thing, I mean, a lot of people make it seem like they're like, oh, he got permission from his coach to post his like top lane priorities. I mean, he posted his top lane priorities. It was instantly used against him, and then they lost. So it was like, is that like not like that's a pretty bad thing to have done. And when people say you got permission, it's like, how did you get permission? Is it the type of thing where it's like a kid like nagging their mom, like, can I get this? Can I get this? Can I get there? Or like, can I go there? Can I go there? Can I go there? Can I buy this game? And then finally you get permission, but it's like you just wear them down. Or is it a type of thing where like the coaches were like, this is a great idea, Blippo, let's do this. We want to do this. Like, it seems like this has been, from how everything has been presented, it seems like this is all a Blippo idea, right? Like this, like he's the one that said it in the in the interview, like what didn't come from the organization first. Then there was like the Blippo graphics where he's like, I'm gonna release my top lane priorities. I haven't seen this from the other players on the team. Inspired is not releasing, this is how I think about jungle. These are my like jungle priorities. So like, I don't know if this is just the org going along with what Blippo said, or if like the org actually thinks that this is like the best like thing to do, like competitively, or just like if they're happy sacrificing a little bit of competitiveness in order to try to like really grow the brand. I'm not sure where everyone lands on this, because it feels like you're just hearing everything secondary from FlyQuest.
Yeah, I think they are happy to do it though, because I was tuned in very briefly to Hotline League last night, and the topic of streaming scrims came up, and Papa Smithy confirmed in the chat that it would be full, like, and I quote, Los Ratones style from you, of full comms, full reviews, like basically completely unfiltered. Nothing in that scrim set that is streamed will be like muted or anything like that. Everything is going to be out in the air. So again, I lean in your direction too. As far as doing it in a major region in tier 1, it just feels like you're giving out strats for free. Which, if you are so confident that you're basically just gonna qual to worlds every year, then I guess. But if you're talking about domestically, of like, hey, trying to win titles back to back, right? Like actually competitive drive of just dominating for the sake of dominating, then this is obviously a huge compromise. But if they feel like it's worth that compromise, leveling up the rest of the league, then I guess, let's go NA, right? That's seemingly the mantra for the decision. But I still just can't get on board with it. I think the whole context of this like streaming scrims thing is just a complete like bandwagon hype thing from you guys and Los Ratones, where contextually it's just different, right? You guys are a complete content team. That has been like the thing from day dot. So, and obviously Los Ratones is a little bit more of a mix. They're definitely taking it a little bit more seriously, but they want to provide content. You're competing for competitions in at internationals, bro. Like,
I mean, you're trying to win worlds here.
Like exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of like things that I didn't like about it. Like, I'm okay with the idea. I just think that the way that the community reads these types of things is it's always like appeal to authority. It's like, like FlyQuest is the best team right now. I mean, they actually, like, after they lose to C9, they shouldn't be considered the best team right now, like, because they are playing, they might not even qualify for Brazil, right? Like, who knows what ends up happening this week? I assume they will, but I just don't like the appeal to authority thing, because, okay, if you say this is a really great idea, right? And then a team that's better than you then says, actually, this is shit. Like Women's of T1 says, streaming scrims, that is a fucking idiotic idea. We will never stream scrims. Like, we're trying to win worlds. Like, we don't want to stream our scrims. Like, we want to like just focus on winning. If they then say that, like, what is, like, then do we have to be like, because what the community normally does is they're like, actually, that is a great, of course you wouldn't stream scrims. Like, you think Faker wants to stream scrims? Like, some people have like the competition and they like have they have the competitive drive to win and stuff. So like, I just always hate these discussions in the community, because it just feels like they just go over like, oh, well, Bibble won and he said it, so that means it must be fucking good. Like, that is like this extent to the thinking. And the other thing is, like, let's say FlyQuest actually starts losing. Are they going to change their opinion, or like does the community change their opinion, or was it just like objectively good the whole time? Because it feels like when you mention the criticisms of streaming scrims, people just like they're just like, oh, of course streaming scrims is a good idea. Like, people don't even consider the option of it being bad. Like, a lot of people are like, well, if they're gonna play the same things anyway, it's like, bro, there's so much more than that. There's like how the team talks, like how they're able to like identify lane swaps. Like, I assume that all the other teams are going to watch this scrim set, and all the teams that play in the LTA should be learning from this. All the teams that play in the LTA South should be learning from this. Okay, this is how they do lane swaps. Okay, this is how they think about like what they're doing. Oh, this is the conclusions that they take away from the game. Like, yeah, I mean, it might level up the region, but is that okay? Let's say they level up the region, but like they end up being worse. Is that a win for FlyQuest? Like, hey, as a neutral viewer, sure. Like if the region gets better, great. But like if you're competing like that, like I wouldn't want to do that because that would affect everything else like about my career. Like your career matters at some point as well. So yeah, I don't know, man. It just seems like a very like strange way that we've like came to this conclusion. Like it essentially feels like Whippo has just like said it was good, and then everyone just bandwagoned it rather than like people came to like a joint conclusion. And then also, the Los Ratones thing is not comparable to like Los Ratones, us, nowhere close to comparable to like winning, like trying to like compete in the like LEC or LTA or anything like this, where the goal from that is to win worlds. Like you can't win worlds when you play in ERLs, right? Like you could play at EU Masters. It's like you're playing second tier competition where the goal is also more to improve for most teams as well, which so teams are going to be, trying for that. As a pro player, your goal is to win, right? Like improving is something you want to do, but your main goal is to win. So it's just different when you talk about like the different angles that you have towards the competition.
Boom. That's the stream scrims argument. It's happening anyways this week. Now it seems like the teams that qualified are, I think it's Cloud9. Is it Cloud9 the one that's gonna stream scrims?
Yep.
Later with FlyQuest. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And honestly, this reminds me of Worlds in New York. Do you remember that time, Dom, when I got so pissed because who showed up and it was like a full LPL crowd at Madison Square Garden, and I was like, we have all these fans that say we want this thing, let's do this thing, why don't we ever get more events, why is there less events? And then it's at Madison Square Garden and no one fucking shows up, and that there's LPL fans handing out fan signs for free for their fans because they love that shit. It was, you know what, fans better show up, and if not, it's another situation of leadership just kind of kowtowing to the thing in the moment.
Just on that for like half a second. Stinks for the NA fans, but they did that shit in Europe too. Like that happened at every venue. When I was there at Worlds, I was told it happened all throughout in Paris, but then also at MSI in 2023. Now, granted, we have a very big Chinese community in London, so it kind of makes sense that there was a big turnout. But like, I got to stage host one of those days, actually, in the venue, which was an awesome experience. And it was, I want to say, JDG versus T1. It was like the double series that day. And I got the crowd to do fighting/Gyro. And it was like resoundingly about 5 to 10 times louder for the Chinese side, for the JD fans at T1. So no matter what, and that was like 2,500 fans. Crazy thing. So no matter what, they show up. Like that is an LPL exclusive thing. I feel like they will travel for their teams and they'll do it.
There's a lot of Chinese people, man. Like there are a lot of Chinese people in the world.
There's just a lot of Chinese people. Yeah,
I mean, I get that, but there aren't more Chinese people in New York than there are non-Chinese fans in New York.
I don't know.
There's not more like Chinese fans in London than there are non-London fans. It's so
I don't know, man. Like for League, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, you have to remember those two cities as well. Not to derail the whole conversation. Very multicultural places. So
yeah.
I could buy into it. I could buy into them. That's all I'm saying. Like, it's no shade to the NA fans. I just think it's hard to outdo the LPL fans. Like when it comes to those international shows. That's it. That's all I had to say.
All right. The point of it is to fucking show up if you are complaining about this thing. So I hope how many viewers does this stream need to be successful, Dom?
I mean, I don't think there's a number on it, to be honest. Like, I mean, I think that the idea of like, if it's from a content perspective, like any amount of viewers is good, right? Like that's how I view it. But it's like, what it comes down to is like, do you want to sacrifice competitiveness for content? And so far, the answer has always been no. Like that's always been super taboo. Like people didn't like the idea of sacrificing competitiveness for content before. So seems like people are more open to it now. But we talked about all the reasons for that, and I just think that generally, like that is I don't know. I think it's a mindset that like from fans, like a lot of the fans have expressed the mindset of like, well, you're not going to win anyway, so like who cares about like that? Like why don't you at least like try to make content? Like, I can understand that from a fan perspective. I can't understand, like, if you're a competitor and that's what you think, you should fucking quit your job instantly. Like, that should be you should instantly quit your job in the LTA or LEC if you're like, yeah, we're not going to win anyway, so let's just do everything for content. Like, that is not the right mentality. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how long lived it ends up being. If this is a one and done, or if this is something that like will happen every now and then, you know, like, what scrims really mean? Does that mean like, oh, in certain review, let's talk about draft priorities in certain reviews? Like, let's just talk about things that are already accessible in a way. And it's like, you're not really streaming the scrims. You're kind of just like doing show matches at that point. What is actually happening there, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's move to the bottom side of the bracket. Let's give 100 Thieves some props. I know we did earlier saying like Ayla doing better, but Quid had his standout moment. You know, he reverted back to MVP form. He had a couple of huge plays thanks to some misplays, but either way, he was the Chad of the weekend, winning player of the week. What do you make of them in terms of their performance, and what do you learn from it all here, Jamada?
They're not as bad as I was led on to believe by the international fans and the domestic fans from last year. Like, I think maybe, again, I always have to preface this. My LCS/LTA North takes are always going to be a little bit more outdated / fresh, because I had no reason to watch the league for like the last 3 years until right now, right?
Yeah.
But for like Worlds, everyone's like, yeah, they're shit. They're not going to do well. And then lo and behold, they were shit and they didn't do well. And I think at the very least, that duped me into believing that they just weren't a good team, point blank, period. But clearly, between the changes as well, or the change rather of having FBI in the AD slot. Now, I don't think that the ADCs generally this year are like that important. I think your overall team structure and your objective setup and, you know, the general way that you look to approach the game to game in terms of, do we want to prioritize grubs? Do we want to dragon stack? Do we like how our teams adapting to like Atacon setup, etc.? Those things right now are far more important than like specific individuals. But FBI also incredible. So to me, I'm looking at this and I'm just going, everyone pranked me into believing that 100 Thieves were just shit. Like, as far as top teams were concerned, right? And they were just like the solidified third best team in NA. So to me, I'm a pleasant passenger in this experience of watching them show up and upset the proverbial apple cart in beating 4 hour sleep brain is hitting me. Who did they beat again? The TL. Thank you. Yes. But also, as we've kind of alluded to, the TL stuff is just a perfect storm for me, or like to happen, right? So yeah, that's where I'm at with 100 Thieves.
Dom, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they played extremely bloody games, right? Like, they played like 50. Like, I think that series had like 150 kills or something, like almost like, or like in the 120s, 130, something like that in 3 games. It's actually insane how many people were dying in these games, and that's always been where 100 Thieves have thrived. So I wonder if we get into like best of 5s where people are tightening up later on in the season, how things actually end up going for them. But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, I do think they're playing better, and I think that they just upgraded their lineup. I think FBI has always been better than Tomo, so that's a good upgrade. Ayla's playing a little bit better. Sniper is like older now. Quid has continued his form. River is still being really consistent. So I just feel like this is a team that, you know, it wasn't impossible for me to see them being better than they were last year. I mean, they upgraded their roster, and they have like a really good talent that is now getting more time to play competitive, right? So I generally think that the team is kind of underrated by fans at this point. I don't think that they're bad. I think that there's a very clear top 4 and bottom 4 right now in the LTA. It's like you have C9, FlyQuest, TL, and 100 Thieves, and they are going to beat everyone in that Disguise, Dignitas, Lion, and Shopify tier. Like, there's a very distinct top and bottom, which is kind of similar to like what we have in LEC. Not so much because Vitality's looking a little bit better, but yeah, I mean, we'll just see how things end up going for them going forward. But I do think that the real test for 100 Thieves will be like when things tighten up, which is generally later on in the season. You know, best of 5, stuff like this. Are they able to still, keep their style throughout games? Are they able to find leads, or do they end up getting like macroed to death by a team like FlyQuest or a team like TL or like any of these other ones?
Yeah, I would love to see them go down, like, as a European fan, I would love to see this lineup go down the Fnatic route of like just being
losing all the time.
Yeah, you got me. No, but like playstyle wise, like kind of being the traditional, we'll just fight you to the death team, and kind of outhand you, because it feels like that's what this team is good at. Like, at least to me, and the read that I have is that they're just a pretty decent hands team, right? So I would like to see them lean into that, and I agree. I think the big test for them will be the best of fives, where that kind of style can definitely be adapted to. It can be abused quite heavily. Teams can play chess around you. Teams can outthink that style. So I think when it comes to maybe some of the more macro acclimated teams in an A, maybe that will end up being their shortcoming. But I think they can probably outfight that. I have a gut feeling about this 100.
Well, that's also part of my fear, that like they're gonna get let's say that they make the run and they're the team that wins the split one playoffs. They go to first stand. They get false positive here, right? You outhands NA. You know that you're not going to get macroed by. Probably you're not going to get macroed by Brazil. So that's who we send to first stand. And I don't know if you're going to outhands China. That'll probably give you the best chance. You're going to get macroed by Korea.
I mean, I don't even know, like, because the teams that are playing the good macro in Korea actually don't look like that insane right now. I feel like Gen G and Hanwha Life. I mean, like, I think that Hanwha Life last year, they kind of like got into that tier where they just felt like they were like pretty solid. Where now it's like honestly, people don't like to say it, but right now D+ just looks like the best team in Korea. Like they're just the best team. So, it is kind of moving more towards like the hands gap teams are rising up. Fnatic is rising up. 100 Thieves is rising up. D+ is rising up. These teams that were considered like lower tier in their region, with Otacon being in the game and there just being more fights, the teams that have better hands are starting to really really smurf.
It matters. It matters so much this season. I think there will be like a small shift throughout the year once teams finally get used to like the constant, basically every 3 minutes there's an objective fight. I think teams will get used to it. I think also teams, to me, I don't know, because Dom, you watch still way more League of Legends than I could wish to still. I feel like the art of the cross map died like sometime between 2020 and 2021, and teams just stopped cross mapping and they just started window shopping permanently. And I have a feeling that if there was a year for cross mapping to become popular again and for it to start up again, and I think part of it is because of the way that Dragon Soul became like way more important, but not to derail, I think if we start to see teams more efficiently cross map, then those teams will probably out chess those will be the teams to me. If they make that adaptation throughout the year, I think those will be the teams that actually outdo the hands teams. Because I think there's a pretty clear trend right now that the teams who are good at scrapping and are good at skirmishing seem to be our top teams, and I don't think it's for no bad reason. So that's would be my call out. I think if the teams that are traditionally our macro teams in these leagues kind of make that adaptation where they're always up trading in gold, or if they're behind, any gold trade is normally seen as kind of an up trade, right? That's to me where I think we might see kind of the quick rise and then the quick fall of these mechanical intensive teams being out on top right now.
All right, we've been going for a little while. Let's wrap this bad boy up. FlyQuest Dig. Easy fly win.
Fly win.
Yeah, should be a 2-0. I expect nothing less from them.
At TL Shopify, the way that I would view this one is, do you high roll Palafox and do you low roll Umpty, right? Otherwise, this should be a TL win.
It's going to be a TL win, I think, regardless, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right.
TL can't fuck this one up. Surely is my position. I think even if Umpty like goes for a death record breaking game again,
there's just this little tension there, because it's TL can't fuck this up, right? Like with FlyQuest, we're like, yeah, they take care of Dig, but with TL, we're like, probably.
I think it's because Shopify had a decent showing for themselves so far, right? I
Not
think
game
I think
one
it's
or whatever.
maybe, we'll ignore that. But like, I think for maybe Shopify standards, they've had an alright enough showing, and I think that gives you a little bit more of perhaps internal faith with the mix of TL just not playing like themselves. So
Dom and I have worked long enough together that I know that when he does this, it's like, okay, I will not feed into dGon's feeding of the trolls. Let's just say TL's gonna win and let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's because you know that I just like don't like certain teams. Like Shopify, the way they play the game, like fundamentally,
Yeah.
like I just don't think that they're like a good team. Like I think that they are just not solid. And TL, like they barely lost to 100 Thieves with Umpty int feeding. Like Umpty was int feeding and they barely lost. So like if they're playing against a team like Dig, I think they're going to stomp them even with the int feeding going on.
Right.
Or actually like do they wait,
Shopify.
they play Shopify? Yeah,
Shopify.
they'll just stomp them anyway.
All right. And that's that. Any updates from LTA South? Did you watch this one too? Did you co-stream those matches as well?
Yep, co-streamed everything. I mean, the biggest update, the thing that's crazy, is there's obviously rivalry between the South American teams. Like right now, like CB LOL had a huge fan base, and then two LLA teams were added. Right, like their guest slot is an LLA team. So the one LLA team that got the real spot was Isras Estral, so they will be a permanent spot. And then the guest slot from LTA South was to Leviathan, which is another LLA team. And the two LLA teams beat out all 6 Brazilian teams. So you have a double LLA team in as 1 and 2 seed, and the Brazilian teams all are like in the bottom 6. So that was pretty surprising. Especially considering like Isras Estral, I didn't think they were that good of a team. Pain I thought was gonna roll over Leviathan, didn't end up happening either. So it was very shocking to see what ended up happening because Pain kept the same roster. Like they're the same team that they were before. They have Karaoke Wives, the same team that went to Worlds that was actually doing well and impressed people at Worlds. Ended up like winning a lane versus T1. I mean, they played decently into TL as well, which people were surprised about. They ended up losing their best of 3 to what's considered to be the worst LLA team. So it's really surprising. Like I also thought that the Brazilian teams would be the ones winning. I'm not sure if this means that the LA teams are actually better than the Brazilian teams. I think the Brazilian teams just like need some time to fully adapt to everything. And there was just some like very bad decisions that were being made in the games, which has been a problem. But there are like some players from LTA South that have kind of put the league on notice. So for example, on the Vietton, their mid laner Cody, which some people might know Cody.
He's been around for a while.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. He went international.
Infinity was
He's been around for a while. He's won international before. He looks like he might be just the best mid laner in the league right now in LTA South. So we'll end up seeing if people can exploit his champion pool. I mean, he's playing like a lot of RA, for example. So maybe he falls off, but so far they've looked pretty good. Like they've looked like the LLA teams have been kind of running LTA South. So I actually am interested to see what Brazilian fans even think about that. Like I'm not really tapped in with the Portuguese community or the Brazilian the community that's actually like tweeting in Portuguese and stuff. So I don't actually know what they're saying. But I would assume that this was kind of a sore spot for LTA South, that you have your CBLOL region, you have your 10 teams, and then you get these 2 new teams that come in from LLA, and then they end up running your league. Like that's got to be kind of frustrating for them.
Good for Jose Diodo finding success and continuing his success and getting the opportunity to play. And I guess international, it is somewhat international when the LTA North teams come on down. They've already qualified on in as the 2 seed. As the 2 seed? As the 1 seed. And then Think Card's still alive down there, teaching Furia, his Furia boys, how to play LCS League of Legends. We'll see how they do there. All right. That's it for our show. If we didn't get to something, let us know in the comments below. Good luck to Dom and the Ruddy Sack in their matches this week. Everyone tune in to Cloud9's stream against FlyQuest for their scrims. Jamada, what do you got this week?
I'm spectating Dom probably lose his marbles watching Ruddy Sack play arguably one of the 2 worst teams in the league tomorrow. So I'm going to be there and I'll see. Feel free to tune in, main broadcast, co-stream, take your pick. Both very, very fine places to be on your Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday evening, morning, or late evening, depending on where you are in the world.
Perfect. Dom returns back to streaming LPL on. Well, it's Saturday for me. Is it Saturday for you, Dom?
Yes.
Yes. Saturday with FPX and NIP, and then Weibo against JDG. Then they wrap it on up. LCK kicks off our play-ins playoffs, which the bracket is kind of weird, but it's fine.
What do you think about the bracket? Because I'm kind of a hater. Like, I feel like Hanwha Life T1 being an elimination match, like,
yes,
most likely,
that is so
then,
crazy.
The other side being like KT versus like DRX or some shit. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's a weird format.
So I appreciate that the LCK probably did LPL did the best. I think the LPL did the best with their format and how they're doing things. But that's because they're able to broadcast every day. I think LCK did pretty good and they're willing to take risks. But if for those of you that don't know, it was the group battles. So if your group, the teams in your group won, you would progress to either the playoffs or the play-ins. If your group lost, only the top teams would progress, and then the bottom team got eliminated. That was BNK for X. The biggest thing out of all this is that KT, who's the third place team in the winning group, will play probably Bro or DRX or the DN Freaks. Yeah. Yep. And on the other side of the bracket, in the first round, single elimination, probably will be T1 and Hanwha Life Esports.
I mean, you just run into really weird things with this type of format because, like, you could make the argument that one of the team is incentivized to lose when they play their seeding match, because if T1 or Hanwha Life loses, then they don't have to play each other in an elimination best of 5. They could potentially, they're most likely going to play against KT on the other side of the bracket, right? So I feel like I don't like any format really where it's good to lose. Like, I feel like it should never really be good to lose in a format, but I think in this format there's like a lot of situations where it will be good to lose because the way it works is it's very group sided, right? Like the way the groups work is there's a top 3 in one group that are the 3 highest seeds going into the playoffs, and the other group, the top seeds, have to go into play-ins. But I think it's very rare where the first seed in one group is going to actually be worse than the third seed from the other group. Like, normally the team, like, T1 just looks better than KT, right? Like, I would just believe that T1 is going to beat KT every single time. So it just seems like a weird thing because LCK has always been top heavy, right? Like, it's always been like a top 2 teams, top 3 teams, and then everyone else is kind of worse than that, or top 4 teams, whatever. And now it's like, if there is a top 4, that means that like 2 of the teams that are on the other side are now going to have to try to dodge each other, or they're just going to eliminate each other first round of the cup, which I think is kind of weird.
I wonder how they could fix that. Would have been maybe like top 2 get the seeds, and then the third place team gets like an extra bye in the playing rounds, and then everyone else plays below that. Like, I'm not 100% sure, but it's not. It will be fixed for next year. It'll be interesting how it plays out for this year. And like, to change it now would also be kind of like a slap in the face to KT because they followed the rules and they got it. So I think this is something, a pretty big learning lesson for a new format for this first split kind of stuff. Final thoughts on that, Jamada?
I have none. Honestly, the format is quite confusing to me. Just at face value. And yeah, I agree. Any format where there's like even a modicum of incentive to lose, just to potentially roll better,
bad.
Like, it's bad. It's not good. So yeah, it seems like there's probably a learning lesson here from LCK admins, and I think it'll probably be adjusted next year. Especially if we very rarely end up with shenanigans occurring when this kind of situation arises, but. Yeah.
I mean, we've had it before in LCS where it's like, you don't, obviously you're not going to like troll the match. Yeah. Well, not even that far back. 100 Thieves had that time where they fielded their whole academy lineup for like their final game, and like if they played their actual lineup, they probably would have won, and that would have actually meant that another team would have made it into playoffs. So they eliminated a stronger team by playing their academy lineup, and then you can always just say, hey, we just want to give this match doesn't really matter, so we're just giving our players more experience, right? Like that's the angle you can always pull. And then it's like you're not really like losing on purpose. You're not win trading, but you will probably lose. Like you tell your players, hey, play your best, but it's just an academy team instead of your real team.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if that happens or not. Hopefully not, but if it does, we've got you covered for next week's episode of Pyrospike, which has all the regions back in action. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to all of our sponsors. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of this episode. Until then, see you later.